Are US-Iran tensions reaching boiling point? Washington's decision to label Iran's Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization and the ongoing war of words between the two is fueling speculation. So, are we really in danger of another war, or is it solely a game of who will blink first, Bush or Ahmadinejad? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Imran Garda. Well, the last few months have seen tensions ratcheting up between Washington and Tehran. The latest incident involved the detention of a group of 8 Iranians in Baghdad. The US military called it a regrettable incident. It comes amid fears of a possible clash. Mohammed Shukair has more.
Iran has long been a source of trouble.
A war of words between the American and Iranian presidents. How would it turn out? Bush waved the stick, but it seems Ahmadinejad has ruled out the chance of using it. Time may be pressing as Bush's term draws to an end. The feeling in the White House is that Bush needs to finish off all pending issues, since his successor could have very different priorities. Subjecting Iran to the same trenches as Al-Qaeda made it justifiable for the American president to target Iranian interests outside Iran. Detaining an Iranian delegation in Baghdad for a few hours could be seen as the first example of this. Such a strong note makes Bush's statement more audible in setting forth his new strategy in Iraq ahead of the expected report by General Petraeus in mid-September. However, Iranian President Ahmadinejad is not taking the US threats seriously. He has repeatedly said that his country's nuclear program is strictly peaceful and has pledged to keep it going. He looked relaxed despite the American high pitch. He feels the US does not have the ability to launch a war against his country at this time, and expressed his readiness to fill a possible vacuum that would be created by the withdrawal of the US troops from Iraq. Ahmadinejad sees it as inevitable. But he faces severe challenges at home. High unemployment, rising poverty has seen support tumble. Nevertheless, all indications are that Ahmadinejad still has a few cards up his sleeve. Ironically, some see the latest escalation as a possible way of advancing the search for a compromise and a peaceful solution to this crisis.
Well, despite recent praise by the UN's nuclear agency for what it calls Iran's significant step forward in explaining past atomic action, the war of words continues.
Recently, coalition forces seized 240-millimeter rockets that had been manufactured in Iran this year. That had been provided to Iraqi extremist groups by Iranian agents. The attacks on our bases and our troops by Iranian-supplied munitions have increased in the last few months, despite pledges by Iran to help stabilize the security situation in Iraq. Some say Iran's leaders are not aware of what members of their own regime are doing. Others say Iran's leaders are actively seeking to provoke the West. Either way, they cannot escape responsibility for aiding attacks against coalition forces and the murder of innocent Iraqis. The Iranian regime must halt these actions, and until it does, I will take actions necessary to protect our troops. I have authorized our military commanders in Iraq to confront Tehran's murderous activities.
I'm saying now the political situation is declining, and we are ready and willing, along with other forces in the area, Saudi Arabia and others, for the sake of the safety of the region, to help fulfill our role. Those who refuse to see the truth are only fooling themselves. I am pleading, stop playing politics. Recognize the government of Iraq, support the people of Iraq. Nothing will change with playing mind games with people. If you are in Iraq for another 50 years, nothing will change. It will only get worse.
Well, two confident presidents there. Well, joining us to discuss the US-Iranian relationship from Cairo, Joel Bainan, Professor of Middle East History at Stanford University. From London, Bakr Moeen, Director of Jadid Media. And on the phone from Washington, D.C., Patrick Clausen, Deputy Director of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Welcome, gentlemen. Joel Bainan, if I can start off with you first, sir. Is Iran being blamed for US mistakes in Iraq?
I think that's a fair summary of the situation. Somebody has to take the blame for what is, after all, the biggest foreign policy debacle of the United States in the 20th century. And Iran is as good an enemy to blame as any.
Patrick Clausen, I've got a quote from journalist and filmmaker John Pilger. He says, "The threat from Iran is entirely manufactured, aided and abetted by familiar, compliant media language that refers to Iran's, quote, nuclear ambitions, just as the vocabulary of Saddam's non-existent WMD arsenal became common usage." What do you make of that quote and, of course, of the idea that Iran is being blamed for the U.S. mistakes in Iraq?
There's a reason that the Security Council unanimously has twice imposed sanctions on Iran, and a reason why the United Nations inspectors from the Nobel Peace Prize-winning International Atomic Energy Agency have said that Iran is engaged in an 18-year history of concealing its nuclear activities. And that is that Iran's nuclear program is not in compliance with its international treaty obligations. And once Iran has consistently misled the international community about its nuclear activities, it's hardly surprising that there are suspicions about what else Iran might be misleading us about. And all of these Iranian-manufactured weapons that are showing up inside Iraq raise the disturbing question of whether or not the Iranian government is allowing people inside their country to buy advanced weapons without paying attention to where these things are going, or whether Iran's government is actively supplying these to those who use them to kill Iraqis as well as to kill Americans in Iraq.
Bakr Moeen, do you believe that Iran is the biggest winner of the U.S. invasion of Iraq? A week ago, we had former CIA operative Robert Bayer on the show, and he said that Iran is the biggest winner out of the Iraq war.
Well, it's too early to say that Iran is the biggest winner. It depends what would be the outcome. So far as we look on the surface, both in Afghanistan and Iraq, where the Iranian enemies have been removed by the Americans, naturally it has created less problem for Iran in terms of its foreign policy, but it has brought about new challenges for Iran, because it depends, for instance, what is going to happen in Iraq. I don't think the Iranians would like to see a divided Iraq, because it's not going to be in their interest. At the same time, they don't want to see in Iraq the emergence of someone else like Saddam Hussein. So the end result, we have to wait and look at to say whether they are the winner or not. But on the surface, naturally, the Iranian influence in the region has increased. Part of it is the natural Iranian interest in that region. Regardless who is ruling Iran, Iran has got certain natural interest across its borders as well as in the region. I think on that level, Iranian interest would remain whoever is in power. However, I think the failures of the coalition in Iraq and Afghanistan, because of their strategic mistakes, has led to benefits for the Islamic Republic, of course.
Talking about Iran's ambitions in the region, is Iran trying to woo Saudi Arabia from her current suitor, the United States? Do you think that Saudi Arabia may swing towards Iran's side away from the United States, sir?
I think they have got common interests as far as the stability in the region is concerned. However, I think the mistrust between them, at least in recent years, has increased, and I cannot see any immediate rapprochement or détente between the two sides. I would say rapprochement, because the relations between Saudi Arabia and Rafsanjani and Khatami was better. Rafsanjani started the improvement, Khatami furthered it on. But I think the rhetoric that has been coming out of Iran by President Ahmadinejad has brought some fears among the Gulf states and others that Iranian revolution has been rekindled, and they are worried about it. As for that reason, I cannot see any immediate rapprochement and close relation. Nevertheless, both in Lebanon and in Iraq, as well as within the OPEC, they have to work together. My feeling is that the countries in the region will have got a lot to lose if there is further deterioration escalations of the situation, or in the unlikely or likely situation in which the Americans decide to attack Iranian centers, because that would be really creating a lot of problem for everybody, not only for Iran, but also for Saudi Arabia and others, because things may get out of control.
Joel Bainan, how afraid are Sunni Arab states, you're in Cairo, in Egypt, which is one of them, which are allied to the United States, of Iranian domination of the Middle East?
There certainly is a good deal of trepidation here in Egypt about Iran, mostly on the part of the government as opposed to popular sentiment, which pretty much is supportive of anything that opposes the United States. The Iranian government can't be trusted in terms of what it says, and it's not a very palatable government. Holocaust denial, and as has already been mentioned by Mr. Clausen, trying to conceal its nuclear program. So it's not a very palatable regime, but popular sentiment in Egypt, despite the government's misgivings, is rather favorable to anyone who confronts the United States. It's a pretty difficult situation in which nobody is entirely right about anything. Beyond Egypt, I think, especially in Saudi Arabia, there's a great deal of concern. And of course, countries that are further afield, Sunni Arab countries that are further afield, I don't think there's much interest or paying attention to the whole matter here in the central Middle East.
All right, gentlemen, stay with us. We're going to take a short break. Now, when we come back, we ask, is the US trying to keep Tehran off balance? Is it serious or bluffing about an attack against Iran? And could this approach help advance the search for a compromise and a peaceful solution to this crisis? Do stay with us.